You're listening to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast, episode 251. Welcome to the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. I'm your host, Paula Price, lawyer turned certified executive coach. This podcast was created to empower women lawyers just like you to create a life and practice you love. Join me every week for a break from the hustle so we can focus on you, what you truly want, and how you can create it. If you're over the overwhelm, done with putting out fires, and ready to redefine success on your own terms, you're in the right place. Ready for today's episode? Let's dive in. Let me paint the scene. It's late. You're in bed. You're on your phone scrolling. You need a new pair of shoes for work. And you've been eyeing this pair of loafers. They look really nice. They have that right blend of professional yet flexible. They look good. You like the color. They're the right price point, and they have it in your size. So before you go to bed, you do what you need to do to submit your purchase, and you go to sleep feeling excited, right? What's it going to be like? Are the shoes going to fit? Are they going to look right with your outfits? And you kind of peacefully go to sleep and you forget about it until a few days later when the shoes show up on your doorstep. Now, you open all the packaging. There's always so much packaging. And you take the shoes out of the box and, your first reaction is, oh, yeah, they're nice, but they're not quite what you had hoped they would be. The leather is a little shinier than you thought it would be. It's a bit tougher, like firmer than you expected. And the shape of the shoe is a little bit awkward. The toe is a bit pointier than you hoped for. And so you think, well, I'll give it a go. How bad can it be? Maybe they look really good once I put them on. And so you do that, right? You put on these loafers and you stand in front of the mirror and you look at them and, they feel a bit tight. You can tell that you're going to get blisters on your ankles and you just think, as much as I would love for these shoes to be my next pair of dress shoes, work shoes, this just isn't happening. And I share this story. Well, first of all, this has happened to me. It exactly happened to me, except the time of purchase was 2 a.m. One of those days or nights, I guess, when I woke up and I was thinking about things and why don't I just place that order? And the shoes were loafers, and I thought they'd look so cute, and they didn't. They actually were very uncomfortable, and they looked awful, and I had to get my family to agree, which wasn't hard, and then I had to take them back to the store. But this happens at a career level as well. So if you're thinking about it from the perspective of your job, where you are right now, and how you got there, there may have been a process similar to the one that I described, right? Depending on what stage you're at in your career. You may have been online, looking through all the different options. What are the different firms you can apply to? What are the different roles that would be suitable for you? And based on your research, you chose what you thought would be the best fit for you. And you went through the process, you got the job, and now you're there. And maybe you're fresh in a new role. Maybe you've been in your role for some time. But whatever it is, you can tell there is just something that isn't quite working out. And the purpose of today's podcast episode is to help you. I want to help you take what might feel like a one-size-fits-all, or what often turns out to be a one-size-fits-none approach, right? If that's where you are right now, and take it and tailor it into something that fits so much better for you. And the idea here isn't that if you're in a role right now and it doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean that you need to leave the role that you're in. What I'm offering today are suggestions to help you better tailor where you are right now. And it may be that you have already decided that you are going to transition, or you've recently transitioned into a new role. And so what we talk about may land differently for you. It may be part of a different process, one of either looking for that next opportunity or finding a way to settle in really well where you are right now. So this is really designed to meet you where you are right now and to use what we talk about today to better customize the role that you are in. So what are we going to do? I'm going to offer 3 shifts, and those shifts are designed to help you, number 1, clarify what a tailored practice means to you. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What are you doing day to day? I'm also going to help you identify granular data points that you can measure to see if you're on track. And then finally, the third shift I'll offer will be one that will just help you to go from where you are now to where you want to be by using micro steps. So I'm so glad you're here with me. If you're new to the podcast, my name is Paula Price. I am a lawyer, now coach for lawyers, and this is what I do. I love helping lawyers. I love supporting them in career strategy and implementation, clarity. I love helping lawyers with time management. What are you doing every day? And I love helping lawyers with leadership, whether that's how you're leading yourself or how you're leading your teams. And so today's episode really is about that career question, career clarity, career strategy, how you design a career that you truly love. So that first step is that move away from that one size fits all or one size fits none approach. And it makes perfect sense that if you are there right now, how you got there. So much of what we do as professionals in our early stages, right? If you think about the academic institutions that you've been through, they are excellent and they are designed to help be a place where many people can go, people of all different backgrounds and all different interests, where they come out and in the case of a law degree, you all get the same degree. We know that the process is going to be different, that different people will take different electives and that they will go on to do very different things with their lives. But the institution is the same and there's a fairly high level of standardization, right? Standards in terms of the tests, standards in terms of the requirements you need to take, etc. And depending on where you go next, right? If you go to a firm or an organization with a high degree of structure, then in some ways there's a customized program set up for you. And if you go into a more flexible or a smaller firm where there's more flexibility, chances are it's a little bit more of a choose your own adventure. So what I'm trying to offer here today is that if you do find yourself right now in a one size fits all situation, that it makes sense. And what I'm going to encourage you to think about here today is whether there's flexibility that you might not yet be seeing to customize that environment that you're in so that it's better tailored to what you're trying to do. So in the world of fashion, which I'm not super familiar with, my daughter takes sewing lessons and it's absolutely incredible what they do there. And maybe that's why tailoring is on my mind. But if you think about like a one size fits all garment, right? Maybe it's shoes. I talked about shoes and how sometimes they don't fit. Sometimes it's that one size fits all hat. We've all tried on those hats that are one size fits all, and sometimes they're too loose and sometimes they're too tight, but do they really fit everybody? You might think of a one size fits all t-shirt, the t-shirt that's either huge if you're relatively petite or it barely covers your midriff if you're really tall. Like, what is that? One size fits all. And so in the world of customized tailoring, you might think of that bespoke, that made to measure outfit that looks so great on you because it's designed for you. And I did a bit of digging into these terms because they're not ones that are all that familiar to me, but I think it's actually quite relevant to our discussion. Made to measure, if you aren't familiar with what that term means, is actually defined as a garment or product specifically manufactured to a customer's personal body measurements or specific requirements. Using a standard size base pattern, it is altered for a better fit than off the rack, but is not created from scratch like bespoke. Now, I thought this was really interesting to share because I would probably venture that most of you who have joined me here today are in a made-to-measure situation where you are employed somewhere, whether it's a law firm, whether it's government, whether it's in-house. Chances are you're within an organization where it is made to measure. It is there and it's kind of standardized and you get to do some tinkering. The level of tinkering depends on the degree of flexibility, but you're in a made to measure environment compared to a bespoke one. And bespoke is custom made based on the measurements or specifications provided. So in my mind, that's like a solo practitioner or the founder of your own firm, where you truly are customizing and you have full authority to customize in whatever direction you choose. So if we go back to this idea of a one-size-fits-one model, so we're tailoring your career to you, then what we want to get really clear about is you. We want to measure you. So if you think about this again in the sense of a garment, you I totally imagine a tailor with their measuring tape and, their pencil tucked behind their ear and, a pin cushion with all the pins sticking out of it. And you're there and they're measuring your body and they're asking you what kind of colors you like. They're evaluating perhaps what colors look best on you. You might be thinking about the style of clothing that you're going to wear, the use, right? If you think about what you want to use that clothing for, is it business purpose? Is it fun? It needs to be perfect for a really important event? Fabrics, what kind of fabrics do you want it to be? Are you allergic to wool like I am? In which case you would probably want to steer away from that. Do you want cotton instead? Is there a certain fabric that you think would look really great for the garment you're trying to produce? And durability. Do you want this to be something that you can wear every day? Does it need to be quite robust? Or is it a one-off, right? A really elegant dress that you're going to wear to an occasion where you can really care for it. So if we're thinking about it in the garment sense, then that helps us kind of get our thinking muscles warmed up for what we're going to think about more directly today, which is your career. So in the episode today, I want to cover the shifts that I mentioned. There's 3 of them, and then offer a challenge for each. And so the first challenge is to identify the measurements that you need to tailor your career. So if you look at you are the case study. I'm encouraging you to start paying very close to attention to what you are going to measure. And if you measure yourself, if you were to create your own profile, what would you say are the things that define you? So what you love versus what you dread. If you look at the work that you have on your plate right now, maybe you've got a to-do list, you can have a quick look at that. And you'll notice there are certain tasks that feel energizing, and there's tasks on there that you probably want to delay or you've already delayed. So notice that. You'll want to take account of your natural strengths and your natural weaknesses or growing edges. Where do you feel most confident naturally? Where do you feel less confident? And knowing that about yourself, you can then decide which of the strengths you want to lean into, which of the weaknesses you may want to develop, or let them stay weaknesses. Maybe they're things you don't need to develop. You want to consider the things that you value the most. What is important to you? What feels important? What do you prioritize? And also, what do you stand against, right? What are the things that make you angry? What are the things that you strongly oppose? And again, you're gathering data points about you so that you can better assess, you can custom tailor the role that you're in to fit you, to fit your profile. So you might think about what your hours look like and what you want them to look like. Are you at a point in your life where you want to work a lot? You want to build up your CV, you want to build up your experience, and your goal is to do as much of that as quickly as possible? Or are you at a stage of life where you want more control over your time? You need to put some boundaries around it. And who do you want to work with? Who do you want as your colleagues? Who do you want as your clients? Who do you want as the professional sort of colleagues that you surround yourself with? So these are all questions that if you can answer them, you get those base measurements, right? We now understand you, we've measured you in some way, and that will help you evaluate whether or not you end up with the right fit. You can be on the right track. So some examples here. You love variety. So you might find that a broad commercial practice gives you that. So when I'm working with litigators, and some litigators will really thrive in a broad commercial litigation practice because every file looks different. They never know which forum they're going to be in. Is it arbitration? Is it traditional court? Is it something else? Is it a tribunal? So that might really help you thrive if what you want is a lot of variety. Or you might be the opposite, right? You want things to be relatively consistent day to day. And so you might want to narrow your practice. You might want it to be more niche, right? Maybe you pick a very discrete area of employment or estate or tax or some area of law where you can really hone in and limit the scope of your practice so that you can go really deep. That might be something that you crave. You might find you love litigation. It's exciting. You get your adrenaline going. You get into court. There's the adversarial nature. You really love that, but you don't want to do it 24/7. And so you might think about what a good ratio would be for you. 25% of active court time, 75% at your desk time, something like that. So you play with the numbers. You might find that you're keen to work hard, right? You want that. And also the stage that you're at right now requires flexibility. So maybe you're thinking about a hybrid environment where there's some degree of physical presence required, but you also have a lot of autonomy to work from home. You might also think you really enjoy working with private clients. You want to serve them. You love that type of work. And there's also a part of you that wants to serve the public, offer your legal services to people who maybe aren't able to have access through private channels. And so maybe there's a portion of your work that goes to low bono or pro bono files. And so again, you're thinking about you and your measurements and what kind of design, right? What kind of career design would work well for you? And then finally, you might think you love to teach, right? And maybe there's opportunities within your role to teach. And maybe it also means supplementing whatever role you're in with a teaching role. There's lots of lawyers who do that, where they will teach a course at a university or a college or somewhere else. And that gives them that breadth of experience that they find really fulfilling. And maybe that's you. So this idea of a one size fits one, this tailored practice, whether it's truly bespoke, you are designing a practice entirely based on how you want to design your firm, or if you're in an environment and you've got that made to measure option, here's the role and you get to customize the role within it. Either way, what we're doing is we're getting your measurements so that we know how we're going to approach that exercise of tailoring. So that's step one. Now, the second shift that I'm going to offer today is the idea of tracking. Now, you've probably heard of KPIs, and if you haven't, the term stands for key performance indicators. And these are the things that you measure, and they will tell you that the data points that you collect will tell you, or they will indicate whether or not you are on the right track. So for lawyers, a very common key performance indicator is the billable hour, right? Many lawyers track it, right? If you're working at a firm, that is probably the most common way to track your billings, right? Or however you want to describe that, is through the billable hour. So that would be a key performance indicator. What are your hours this month? Other things that you might track if you're doing business development, it might be the number of times that you connect with clients, the number of speaking engagements that you have. If you are trying to improve in a particular skill area, maybe it's the number of CLEs that you attend or CLEs that you teach. So we're looking at key performance indicators. And just by coincidence, I had two conversations yesterday that centered on this idea of tracking and what you track. One conversation was in a business coaching context. So looking at some of the key, the KPIs that one would track to measure the health of their business. Those would be things like, revenue, sales calls, client results, engagement in your community. And then the other conversation was more about just generally, it was a question, what are you tracking these days? Which, of course, sent me down a rabbit hole because I'd just been talking about it earlier in the day. And so I've been reflecting on the KPIs, and there are certain things that I track fairly regularly, but I'm not what I would consider a high tracker. I mean, there are some people who have spreadsheets for everything, and I'm not one of those people. So, I really had to think about this whole tracking idea, and I've got a few reflections that I would like to share with you. So here they are. Number one is other people are going to make suggestions about what your KPIs should be and what you should track and why. So what I'd like to offer here is that KPIs are helpful If you work in an organization and they have requested that you track certain KPIs, then I recommend doing that. It will make them happy. It will probably give you some interesting information that could be really helpful. And ultimately, I think we need to be mindful of what we choose to keep track of for ourselves. I think we need to ask ourselves what we want to track, how to track, what type of tracking actually does work for you, and why you're tracking it, to what end. So I think it's easy to get caught up in the KPIs that people tell you that you should be looking at, especially if you haven't done that first step of measuring yourself. Like, what are the things that you measured about yourself? What's important to you? What are the things that matter to you? Right? If you don't yet have that personal information, you won't really know what you would want to track. And I'd also want to add here that when I think about tracking here, I'm thinking about creating a record, like an actual physical record of the thing you're tracking. So I mentally track a lot. And I will record on paper relatively few things. And so for you, you might think about what you're tracking formally versus informally. And here I'm really talking about the tracking on paper, creating a written record. So if you think about brushing your teeth, I brush my teeth at least twice a day, every day. I never write that down. It's just a given. And so to me, I don't need to track that. But maybe if you're training a toddler to brush their teeth, maybe you are tracking it. Maybe they've got a little, chart, and every time they brush their teeth, they get a gold star. There's reasons for that. And maybe I'll get to that in a minute. But think about like what you track, why you track it, what you need to track. And also, I think we all need to appreciate that we come to this question of tracking from a very different perspective. So there are people out there, and you may be one of them, who absolutely love Excel spreadsheets, creating them, working with them, creating graphs out of them. You might love those Google Sheets. They do the same thing. And I am so in awe of you. And I probably should get some training on them so that I could use them in my own practice. But for now, I'm not really using those formal sheets personally, although I work with people who do them and I think they're amazing and I love the data. But let's meet you where you are. What kind of tracking is realistic for you and what is going to be helpful for you? This is not an exercise in judgment. It's an exercise in like, how is this going to be helpful? If you're thinking about your career and how you want to tailor it, what do you want to be tracking? If you want that best next move, if you want your practice to feel like a good fit, what are the things that you want to be tracking and how can you track in a way that's actually doable for you? So after this initial conversation about tracking, my first thought, especially when I saw some of the things that other people were tracking was, I'm not tracking any of this. I must be doing it wrong. That was my initial thought. And then I gave myself a bit of grace there. I paused and I said, well, actually, that's probably not true because after reflecting for a little bit, I realized the following things. So number one, we're all really different, as I just mentioned, and the reasons that we track things will be different. So I'll give you a list of some of the reasons that I think people track things. Many of them are reasons why I would track things. Number one is awareness. What is measured is noticed. If you start to pay attention to anything and write it on a piece of paper, your awareness is going to be elevated no matter what. And once you start to notice, then you can start making changes if you need to. Accountability. If you're trying to form a new habit, it might be really helpful to start tracking. So going back to that toddler example, if they don't yet brush their teeth twice a day, and that's what your goal is for them, tracking that will help get them started, right? And once it becomes a habit, maybe you can stop tracking it. Accountability can also be for your time, right? I record my time every day. I don't do the billings the way that you do, potentially, but I record my time because it helps me keep me accountable to my calendar. So that is one thing I track every single day. It's a handwritten set of notes on a day planner that is next to my computer on my desk. That keeps me on track. So accountability can be a reason why you track. Other things, data. If you're trying to get really clear data about what's working, who are your clients, where are they coming from, how are they finding you, that can be something that you want to track, right? If you need to go and find clients, how are you doing that? How are you initiating those conversations? Maybe you're counting the number of conversations that you have, the number of meetups that you have, the number of events that you attend. Maybe you're counting the number of speaking engagements where you are a speaker. So you're thinking about the things that you want to track, the data that's important to you. Some of that might be, again, requested by your employer, and sometimes it's something that you set for yourself. So another thing that you might use tracking for is to prioritize. If there are things that you know that you would like to prioritize, but you haven't been prioritizing, then maybe you start to track. So this is me right now. When I was sitting in that call yesterday and I was thinking about what am I tracking? There were a number of factors that I wasn't tracking, things like sales calls and email open rates and things that, I kind of pay attention to, but I'm not tracking religiously. And the reason for that is that my focus right now is on the back end. I'm building out systems. I'm building out frameworks. That is my priority right now. So that is what I'm tracking in addition to all of the other things that I do in a day. This back end project, like you can probably relate to, is an important but not urgent project. I'm the one who has to prioritize it. I'm the one who has to track it. Nobody is going to ask me how I'm doing on that. So it becomes something that I track. So for you, you might have those same types of projects, important but not urgent. And so you track it to make sure it gets done. And then the last thing I have on my list here is just reducing your mental load. So I will track things, and maybe you do this too, that I do every day, that I do on repeat. Meal planning is one of them because I feed my kids every day. I feed myself every day. And so that's something that I like to track. Again, not in a spreadsheet kind of way, but in a here's what's happening this week, because once I track it, I don't have to think about it. So there's lots of reasons why you track things. And then the second thing that I've concluded about tracking is that what you track, and you will have already absorbed this, I think, from what we've talked about, what you track is a reflection of what you value or what you want to prioritize based on where you are right now. And so think about what you're tracking. My guess is that you may be tracking your hours. What else are you tracking? So again, some of these might be driven by what your employer has requested, but what about the things that you want to track? So if you think about your workload, for example, maybe you're thinking about the files that you take on. Maybe you're looking at the files and you're saying, okay, what's the average lifespan of a file? And how does that impact you in your practice? Maybe it's helping you understand what your file load should be in order to have a practice that is as busy as you want it to be. You might be thinking about the dollar value, right? If you're looking at files and maybe you're quite close to the process of retaining clients and bringing in work and deciding what work is most relevant versus maybe work that is not work that you would be taking on, you might be factoring that in. What makes sense to you from a practice perspective? Which are the files that you think are most suitable to your work style? So maybe it's the dollar value per file. You might look at the stress levels associated with the type of work that you do. So you might find that there are certain types of files that feel easy versus other files where it's like from the moment they come in, you're on eggshells. And so that might be another metric that you're watching as you are executing your work. Other things you might think about is your relationships within your firm, your organization, the clients that you serve. You might think about the relationships you have with your colleagues, with your professional acquaintances, the role and contributions you make in your community. So there's so many different ways you can be thinking about metrics. And so in that category, you might think about who do you most want to work with, right? And who do you least want to work with, right? And so you'd be tracking who you're working with. Are these the people that you want to be working with? And if so, great. How do you do more of that? If not, then how do you step away from that? You might be actively engaged in business development, and you do that through speaking and through writing and through attending conferences, through deliberate outreach. And so you might be tracking that. How many times a year is right for you? And are you reaching the numbers that you're setting? Community engagement and giving back, right? Are there volunteer opportunities? Are there boards you want to sit on? So again, we're looking at you, we're tracking. What is it that we're tracking here? What's important to you in that category? What would you want to start measuring? And the last example here is lifestyle. If you're in a situation where you feel kind of stressed out, you feel like your hours there's a lot of creep, right? You're not feeling like it's sustainable, then you might start to ask yourself, are you able to leave work on time? Whatever that means to you, right? You might be tracking that. Does the balance of work that you have, like relative to other aspects of your life, does that feel good to you? So those are some of the reasons. So just going back, when we think about tracking, we want to look at, what are the reasons that you are tracking? What are the things that you are tracking? And then finally, when you look at the balance, if you are tracking, right, or you're starting to notice, especially in this conversation, you're thinking, how would I track these things? Then you might ask yourself then too, right? If you're tracking it, is it something that you want to do? And if not, do you want to track them? So I say this because sometimes you'll be asked to track things where it's just like, I don't want to do that. And so I'll give you an example in the call yesterday, sales calls. And there's different types of sales calls. And if I think like cold sales calls, I don't think I've actually done those. And there's a reason for that because I don't think I want to do those. Now, maybe if I gave it some more thought, I'd think, oh, actually, that could be really fun. But a cold sales call, if that's not something that you would want to track and the equivalent for you may be something different, I don't know that would be relevant to your practice. But if you can think about what that equivalent would be for you, if it's something that you're supposed to track and you don't want to track, or you think you should track it, but you're not tracking it, then do you want to track it? Do you want to build a practice based on doing tasks and tracking those tasks of things that you don't want to do? And so what I would offer to you here is if you find that there are tasks, things that you should be tracking or feel like you should be tracking, then ask yourself, number one, is it a means to an end? And by that, is it a means to a desirable end? So there are things that you might do. For example, if sales calls were something that were vitally important to the growth of my practice, then maybe I would start doing them because I would see them that way. I'd attach importance and significance to them. And so that would give me the motivation that I would need to do that. Would I want that 100% of my practice? Probably not. But you might think of the equivalent, right? There are probably parts of your work where it's not your favorite part, but you see how it's essential, how it's something you yourself need to do in order to have that other thing. So is it essential? Is it valuable? In which case, maybe you keep it. Another question to ask yourself is, what if, right? Is it possible that you could do something else, but reach a similar goal? So for example, if business development is your goal and what you've got on your KPI tracker is the number of speaking engagements, and you think, I'm really not into speaking, but I love to write, then maybe we just shift. The tracker becomes, what are you writing as opposed to what are you speaking? And then finally, I think the third thing I would consider here is if you are in a made to measure situation, i.e. you work in an environment where there are KPIs that you're expected to meet, if there's a lot of dissonance between what you're being asked to do, what you're being asked to track, and what you actually want to do, and you're gaining awareness of that over time, and particularly perhaps today, as we're talking about it in the podcast, then is this a place where you can customize? Do you have the flexibility to customize those KPIs? And if not, if you find there's a big values clash or there's a big work clash, like the things that you want to do just aren't available, then you might start to ask yourself whether it is time to start thinking about something different. So your second challenge is to identify 3 KPIs that matter to you. And I'd encourage you to think about KPIs that maybe you're not currently tracking, but if you were to start, there would be a big shift in the nature of your practice. So let me give you some ideas, some examples that you might choose. So if your days are feeling reactive, you might start tracking whether you plan your day in the morning. If you feel like you're getting pulled off track every day, you show up at work and you're busy, but you're not getting the things done that you want to do, then let's start tracking where your time goes in a day. Not just your billable hours, but where is your time going in a day? And does it align with your goals? What are the main culprits? Where are you seeing yourself lose the most time? If you're trying to curate your workload, you're trying to shift your practice in a certain direction, then who are the main sources of your work? Where is your work coming from? Let's start tracking that. And so we can start being more intentional about where we're going to seek out work. If you're trying to have more balance, you might track what time you're leaving each day, what your workload looks like each day. If you're feeling stressed, you may do a tracker based on how you feel. So you might say, okay, I'm going to assess my stress levels every day at 10 a.m. I'm just going to notice it. I'm going to give myself a rating on a scale of 1 to 10. How stressed do I feel? And maybe you write it on a piece of paper. And at the end of the week, you look. And if you see that it's all 10s, that you are super stressed every day at 10 o'clock, that tells you something. If you see a mix of 2s and 8s and whatever, you've got a bit more variety. And maybe that will help you start to see some patterns. This could also apply to confidence. If you're not feeling very confident at work, maybe you start tracking that. When do you feel you're most confident? When do you feel the least confident? What's going on here? Engagement, right? Some days your work feels like a dream. Others, it's just a drag. What's happening? What's different? Maybe you feel lonely, isolated at work, and you're trying to figure out why. maybe you feel really supported or you want to feel more supported. What does that look like? So these are all ways for you to be tracking things that are important to you. And again, your list of KPIs will be different. Everybody's list will very likely be different. And yes, there are certain standard KPIs that organizations will measure across the board, and that makes sense. If you're running a business, you need to have your eye on certain KPIs. And what I'm offering is that you also get to think about the things that are important to you and to track those too. So again, if we are thinking about what you want to track, I encourage you to ask yourself the following questions. Number one, what would be useful to track? What would be useful? What would have an impact on your practice? Number two, how would you go about tracking it? Is it a spreadsheet? Is it a notepad? Is it something else? Is it an email that you send to yourself? And is it an alarm you set on your phone, right? You set a notification, 10 a.m. every day it goes off and you track how you're feeling. And then finally, what do you hope to learn from the data? What is your goal? The data that you get, is it to help you understand where to shift your energy? Is it to spot obstacles that you can solve for? Is it to notice situations that make you feel a certain way? So that brings us to shift number 3. And this is short and sweet. Really, all I want you to do is to take a mindset shift and apply it. You've done some great work already. You've measured yourself. You now know what the model is, what you're starting with, the things that are important, the things that you want to measure about you, and you've measured them so you have a better sense, right? And this really is the starting point for any career decision. We want you setting the GPS, and that starts by measuring you, right? Before you walk into the store, what size are you? What size are you? Because that's going to be a pretty key determinant of the options that are going to work for you, right? If you're a size 6 and there's only size 12 in the store, or there's only size 1, you already know right off the bat that this is not going to work. And so we need to know roughly, who are you? What are we trying to design for you? That leads us to that next step. So your takeaway there, your exercise is to do that, right? Is to start noticing about you, start to create some measurements for yourself. Step 2 is to look at the KPIs, right? Identify 3 of them. What are 3 KPIs that will help you to know whether you are on track, right? Are you meeting the goals that you want for your career? And so that's step 2. So identify 3 of them and start tracking them. And then that third step, that third takeaway relating to the third shift is simply to start doing. And what I'd offer here is to have a barometer of comfort. And what I think can be difficult and potentially stagnating is when we choose comfort over growth. And I say this, I do it, I think we all do it, where we want to stay where it is familiar because it feels safe. And so if you're in a discomfort sandwich where you have 2 options of discomfort, and one is a discomfort you know, and one is a discomfort you don't know, we will often choose the discomfort we know, even though we know, we've learned through experience, it's not going to improve, but at least we know what to expect, the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. So the trouble with that, though, of course, is that then you're recreating the same thing. And so if you're in a one-size-fits-all situation and you're not taking steps to tailor it to you, it's not going to tailor itself, right? The chances of that happening, I mean, there are chances, right? You might, by luck or coincidence, fall into something that works a lot better or files that align with what you really want to do. But if you're leaving it all to chance, then it's not going to happen as quickly as it could if you were to start taking proactive steps to start making that happen. So with the data that you now have and the data that you're now tracking, let's start taking micro steps. Let's look for micro opportunities where there's comfort on one side and there's growth on the other. And I'd love for you to start stepping into growth. And I love the idea of doing it at a micro level because it is a lot more tangible. It's a lot less scary, frankly, than trying to make a big shift all at once. So I guess if we're thinking about garments, it's the equivalent of, I don't know if I'm not a good accessorizer. So for me, like wearing a belt would be a big step up. There's an accessory. So something small and achievable as opposed to, having a belt and a scarf and a handbag for every occasion and bangle bracelets and funky earrings, all the things. It's one thing, right? It's one thing. What is one micro opportunity? So if you look at your practice, maybe you want to have more of a presence in your firm your organization. And so you take on one speaking opportunity, one time where you're going to present a case at a lunch and learn. You might take on a role in organizing something that is outside of your comfort zone. You haven't done it before. It's going to put you in contact with other members of your organization. It's something that you want. If it's a file that you're working on, you're trying to increase your authority, increase your level of responsibility. What is the next thing that you can take on? So we're looking at those moments, those micro moments where you have a chance to lean into the thing that you ultimately want, right? It might be uncomfortable to get there, and you're acting on it. So you're putting what we've just learned into implementation. We don't want a beautiful blueprint for the world's most glorious career to collect dust somewhere, whether it's physical dust in a physical location, right? It's that folder, that file that sits in the closet and never gets attention, right? The cupboard, I suppose. Or, versus like that thing that you're actually implementing. So we want to implement and put into action. And, along this vein, sometimes discomfort is a sign that we should leave, that we should move away. So I want to distinguish that type of discomfort. There's the discomfort of growth, discomfort that's pushing you or bringing you towards something that you want. There's also the discomfort of being in a place that isn't going to advance you. And here I'm thinking about work environments where the discomfort is actually more, it could be relationship driven. It could be discomfort because the work really does not align with what you want to do. So that's a different flavor of discomfort. And if that's the type of discomfort, then I would encourage you to move away from it toward a discomfort of growth, towards something that feels a lot more aligned. So hopefully that clarification adds to give you clarity about where to focus your energy. So that is what I have to share with you today, right? This idea of going from that one size fits all, one size fits none, to a one size fits one approach. We're looking at your career and we are saying, how can we take what's out there and how can we take you and how can we better understand you? How can we set some goals, some KPIs for things that you can start tracking that will bring you closer to that bespoke, that tailored, that fit that feels good, right? So that when you're going to work, you feel energized, you feel excited, you feel aligned, you feel like you're on the right track. So that is what I'm sharing with you. Again, those 3 challenges I'm giving you is really getting to know yourself, measuring, taking your career measurements, if you will. It's that second step of identifying 3 things that you would like to start tracking and what that's going to look like for you. And then finally, that third step of implementation. Where are these micro moments where there's discomfort of growth, right? Or discomfort of staying where you are or leaning into growth. So with that, and maybe I should give you a bit more of a specific challenge for that third one. So can we do that once a week? Once a week, we're going to do that. So pick a day, Wednesdays, maybe a good day. Today is a Wednesday. So is there something you can do every Wednesday or at least once a week where you're picking that growth? Again, that's going to help you to start moving forward and better tailoring your career to what it is that you truly want. So if you need help with any of that, of course, you're welcome to reach out to me. I'm always happy to hear from you. And I hope that this episode has clarified for you some of the things that you'll be looking for in your role, in your career. And I'm just really grateful that we had this chance to connect today. And I look forward to speaking with you again next week. That's all for now. Take care. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, subscribe and follow the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you haven't already, please leave a rating and review. Your feedback will help me create a podcast that's tailored to your needs and goes straight to the heart of what matters to you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Joyful Practice for Women Lawyers podcast. If you want more information, visit www.thejoyfulpractice.com. See you next week.